My name is Myra Pullman. I was 33 years old the night my father handed me a letter that was supposed to end me. It was my sister Leah's wedding. 300 guests, a lakeside estate wrapped in fairy lights that reflected off the water like scattered coins. The band was playing something slow and golden, and Leah stood 12 feet away in imported lace, champagne in one hand, watching me. Waiting. My father walked across the reception floor holding a cream-colored envelope sealed with wax, his initials pressed into it. He handed it to me in front of 6 people at my table and said I should read it when I was ready. I read it right there, 2 pages, typed. Legal language mixed with personal grievance. The last line told me I was no longer a Pullman in any meaningful way. Leah's smile widened. She expected tears. She expected me to stand up, knock my chair back, and give 300 guests something to talk about on the drive home. But here is what none of them knew. 3 weeks before my father sealed that envelope, I had already signed something that would reshape everything they thought they owned. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we share stories of everyday people who chose dignity over drama and boundaries over bitterness. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, this one is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. My mother's name was Carol Pullman. She died of pancreatic cancer when I was 14. That is the short version. The long version is that she spent 9 months shrinking in a hospital bed while my father redecorated his office and scheduled client dinners. She asked me to bring her sketchpad. She asked my father to bring the company's quarterly filings. He brought flowers instead. She stopped asking. Carol Pullman co-founded Pullman Development Corporation in 1998 with 40% ownership and a drafting table she bought at a garage sale. She designed the first 3 commercial builds that put the company on the map. My father sold them. That was the arrangement. She built. He talked. 2 weeks after her funeral, I found him clearing out her closet. Suits in trash bags, jewelry in a shoebox for donation. I stood in the doorway and watched him fold her life into black plastic. But he missed something. In the back corner of her top shelf, behind a stack of old blueprints, sat a small cedar box. Dark wood. Brass hinges. It smelled like her closet. Like cedar and old paper, and the faint trace of the lavender sachets she kept in her drawers. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Addressed to me. Myra. Everything I built so you would never have to beg. Remember that when they tell you what you deserve. I was 14. I did not understand what she meant. I thought mothers just said things like that. Big, sweeping sentences that sounded important but did not mean anything specific. I kept the box. I kept the letter. I did not look at the back of it for 19 years. That was my first mistake. Or maybe it was my mother's only secret. 11 months after my mother died, my father brought Diane Morris home for dinner. She was the company's bookkeeper. She had known my mother. She had attended the funeral, 2nd row, black dress, dry eyes. I remembered her because she was the only person who did not cry. Diane moved in by spring. By summer, she had reorganized the house. My mother's reading chair went to the garage. Her framed prints came off the walls. The bedroom they shared became Diane's yoga studio within 6 months. I found my parents' wedding photo in the recycling bin on a Tuesday morning. It was tucked between a cereal box and a stack of junk mail. I pulled it out, wiped the coffee stain off the glass, and carried it to my room without saying a word. Diane noticed. She knocked on my door that evening. She sat on the edge of my bed and put a hand on my shoulder. Warm, gentle. The kind of gesture that looks like kindness from the outside. Your mother would have wanted your father to be happy, she said. Do not make this about you. I was 15. I did not have the vocabulary for what I felt. I just knew that something in her voice did not match something in her eyes. She was performing comfort the way you perform a song you have rehearsed but never felt. Diane's reorganization continued. By the following year, my mother's name had been removed from the company's lobby wall. Her drafting table was donated to a community college. Her design awards were boxed and stored in the attic. Diane called it making space for the future. I called it erasure, but I was 15, and nobody asked me what I called it. Leah was born when I was 16. Diane had her in May. By June, the nursery was decorated in custom wallpaper that cost more than my school supplies for the entire year. By September, my father was telling dinner guests about our new beginning, as if the first 30 years of his life had been a rough draft. Leah grew up in a different family than the one I knew. Private school, dance lessons, a car at 16, a white Audi with a bow on the hood. Summer internships arranged through my father's business contacts. College tuition paid without a single conversation about cost. I watched from the edges. Waitressing after school. Borrowing textbooks. Eating ramen in my bedroom while the family ate roast chicken downstairs. Not because they locked the door, because Diane set 3 places at the table. She said I preferred eating alone. Leah was not cruel. That is important. She was 10 years old the first time she asked Diane why I always looked angry at family events. Diane smoothed Leah's hair and said, "Because she chose to leave us, sweetheart." Leah believed it. Why would she not? She was a child raised on a version of history written by the people who benefited from it. But there was a moment, one I have turned over 100 times since. Leah was 12. I was visiting for Thanksgiving, the last time I would for years. She found me washing dishes alone in the kitchen while everyone else watched football. "Myra," she said, "how come you are never in the family photos?" I opened my mouth, closed it, smiled. "I guess I am always the one holding the camera," I said. She nodded and walked away. She was 12. She did not know the camera was a lie. I left the day after my 18th birthday. 1 suitcase, a scholarship letter from the State University's engineering program, a cedar box tucked between 2 sweaters. My father stood in the kitchen doorway with his coffee and said, "If you walk out that door, do not expect anything from this family." I walked out the door. 15 years. That is how long it took to build a life from 1 suitcase. I studied structural engineering because I liked the math of load-bearing walls, how much weight a thing could hold before it cracked. I worked construction summers. I read blueprints the way other women read novels. Every line was a wall I could build myself. By 25, I was a project manager at a commercial construction firm in Charlotte. By 28, I was managing hospital expansions and mixed-use developments worth tens of millions. I earned every title, every client, every late night reviewing steel specifications at my kitchen table. I never called home asking for money, never asked for a reference, never asked for anything. That was my weakness, though I did not see it then. I carried everything alone because trusting anyone felt like handing them a knife and showing them where to cut. Grace Huang was the exception. We met freshman year in a study group for calculus. She became an estate attorney. I became an engineer. We stayed close the way people do when they have seen each other fail exams and eat cold pizza at 2 in the morning. Grace was the only person who knew the full story of my family. She never told me to forgive them. She never told me to forget. She just said, once, over Thai food on a Friday night, "Myra, you are the most competent person I know, and the loneliest." She was right about both. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in October. I was 32. I had finally saved enough for a down payment on a condo, a 2-bedroom in a renovated mill building near uptown Charlotte. Good bones, good light. The kind of place I had been building for other people my entire career. The mortgage officer called me back within 48 hours. His voice was careful, practiced. "Miss Pullman, we are unable to approve your application at this time. There are some items on your credit report that need to be addressed. 2 home equity lines of credit. $180,000 total. Opened when I was 16 and 17. Addresses listed. Properties owned by Pullman Development Corporation. Borrower name, Myra Pullman. My social security number. My date of birth." I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and read the credit report printout 3 times. The paper shook because my hands were shaking. $180,000 of debt I had never signed for, attached to properties I had never lived in, funding a life I had never been part of. I called Grace. She picked up on the second ring. I read her the numbers. She went quiet for 5 seconds. 5 seconds is an eternity from a lawyer. "Myra," she said, "they stole your name. Literally." I stared at the printout. The numbers were specific. The addresses were specific. The dates were specific. Both lines opened while I was still a minor living under my father's roof. Before I packed my suitcase. Before I walked out the door. They had turned me into collateral before I even knew I was leaving. "What do I do?" I asked. "You let me pull some records," Grace said, "and then we figure out what else they took." Grace found the trust on a Thursday. She had started with the credit lines, tracing the home equity loans back through county property records. Pullman Development Corporation owned 9 commercial properties across 3 counties. My mother's name appeared on the original filings for 7 of them, as co-owner, designer, co-signer. After her death, every filing listed Richard Pullman as sole owner. The transfer was recorded under an executor decree signed by my father and filed by the family's attorney. But Grace kept pulling. 3 layers deep in the county clerk's digital archive, she found a separate filing. A testamentary trust, established by Carol Ann Pullman in 2006, 1 year before her diagnosis. Filed with a different attorney, not the Pullman family lawyer, an independent estate attorney in a neighboring county. The trust designated one beneficiary, Myra Pullman. The asset, 40% ownership of Pullman Development Corporation. Activation date, the beneficiary's 30th birthday. I was 32. The trust should have activated 2 years ago. My father, as executor of my mother's estate, was legally required to notify me. He never did. He never filed the trust with probate court. He buried it the way Diane buried my mother's drafting table, quietly, with a donation receipt and a clean conscience. Grace called me at 9:14 at night. "Myra, your mother left you 40% of that company." I sat on my kitchen floor. The tile was cold under my legs. "She left it in a trust," Grace continued. "Your father suppressed it. For 19 years. I held the phone against my ear and thought about the cedar box sitting on my nightstand, about the letter inside it, about a sentence I had read 100 times but never truly heard. "Everything I built so you would never have to beg." The wedding invitation arrived on a Saturday in March. Thick cream cardstock. Gold foil lettering. Leah Pullman and Nathan Mercer. A lakeside estate in the Blue Ridge foothills. 300 guests. Black tie optional, which in my father's world meant black tie required. I held the invitation over my kitchen counter and did the math. The venue alone ran $60,000 to $80,000 for a weekend booking. Catering for 300. A band, not a DJ. Imported flowers. A custom cake from a bakery in Asheville that charged by the tier. $280,000. Conservative estimate. I thought about the home equity lines in my name. About the trust my father had hidden. About the 40% of a company that should have funded my mother's legacy and instead funded my sister's lifestyle. I called Grace. "Leah's getting married. Lakeside estate. 300 people." Grace was quiet for a beat. "You should go." "Why?" "Because everything they are spending will eventually become part of the financial picture. And because you should see it." I looked at the invitation again. RSVP by April 15th. I circled the date. That same week, Grace filed 2 documents. The first was a trust activation affidavit with the surrogate court, formally identifying me as the sole beneficiary of my mother's testamentary trust. The second was an identity theft complaint with the State Attorney General's office, documenting the 2 home equity lines opened in my name without my knowledge or consent. Both filings were accepted. Both were assigned case numbers. I signed the affidavit on a Wednesday morning before work. My hand was steady. The pen was a cheap ballpoint from my desk drawer. The document was 4 pages long. My father's disownment letter would be 2, but I did not know that yet. I mailed the RSVP the same afternoon. Checked, attending. Grace spread 19 years of corporate filings across her dining room table on a Sunday afternoon. It covered every inch. Manila folders, printed PDFs, highlighted paragraphs, yellow sticky notes marking discrepancies. The timeline was surgical. 2007, Carol Pullman dies. My father files executor decree claiming full ownership of Pullman Development Corporation. 2008. Diane Morris marries Richard Pullman. 2 months later, she is listed as the company's bookkeeper with signatory authority. 2009. First home equity line of credit opened in Myra Pullman's name. $62,000. Secured against a commercial property on Route 9 that my mother had designed. 2010. Second home equity line. $118,000 total. I was 17. I was waitressing at a diner on 4th Street and studying for the SAT. 2011 through 2025. My mother's name removed from all corporate documents. Company rebranded from Carol Pullman Design Associates to Pullman Development Corporation. Website updated. Lobby plaque replaced. Design awards moved to attic, then to storage. Grace laid it out like a case because it was one: trust suppression, identity theft, breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent executor administration. The trust activation is straightforward, she said. Surrogate court will recognize it. Your father was legally obligated to notify you at 30. He did not. That is black-letter law. And the credit lines? The AG office will investigate. These were opened when you were a minor. Your father had access to your social security number as your legal guardian. He used it. That is a felony in most states. I looked at the papers. 19 years of quiet theft, documented in ink and filing numbers. How long until he knows? I asked. The AG sends a preliminary inquiry letter within 60 days of the complaint. We filed in early April. Wedding is late May. She paused. He will know after the wedding. I nodded. That was enough. Diane's manipulation was never loud. That was what made it effective. She did not scream. She did not threaten. She rearranged reality one detail at a time, the way you remove stitches from a hem. Slowly, carefully, until the whole garment falls apart and nobody remembers it was ever whole. Holiday dinners where my chair disappeared. Oh, I thought you were not coming. Family portraits taken on the front porch without me. You were in the bathroom, sweetie. We could not wait. The light was going. Christmas cards signed Richard, Diane, and Leah, sent to 200 contacts every December. My name erased from the family's public face for a full decade. She told the women at church that I had estranged myself. Our oldest chose to leave. We pray for her every Sunday. She said it with the sad smile of a woman burdened by someone else's choices, not her own. She told Leah that my mother had been difficult and that my father had sacrificed so much. She told Richard that I was angry and unstable and just like Carol. She said these things over dinner, in the car, during commercial breaks, a drip campaign of disinformation that ran for 19 years, and the Disownment letter. That was Diane's masterpiece. I learned this later, through Nathan. It was Diane who suggested it. Diane who drafted the language. Diane who chose the timing, the wedding reception, 300 guests, maximum audience. A formal letter will give the family closure, she told Richard. She will not make a scene at Leah's wedding. She is too proud. She was right about one thing. I was too proud. But she was wrong about what proud people do when they are cornered. They do not cry. They do not run. They count exits. She will always be Carol's daughter. Not ours. That was what Diane said to Richard the night before the wedding. Nathan overheard it through the hotel room wall. My father was never the architect. My mother was. I did not understand this as a child. I grew up watching him shake hands at company events, give speeches at ribbon cuttings, stand in front of buildings with his name on them. He looked like the man who built them. He had the suits, the handshake, the voice. But the designs were Carol's, the first 3 commercial projects that put Pullman Development on the map: a medical office park, a mixed-use building on the waterfront, a boutique hotel that won a regional design award. All of them came from my mother's drafting table. Her sketches, her structural calculations, her late nights with graph paper and a mechanical pencil. My father sold them. He was brilliant at selling. Clients loved him. Bankers trusted him. But without Carol's designs, he was a man with a handshake and an empty lot. I remember a dinner party when I was 12. A client's wife leaned across the table and said to me, "Your mom is the real brains of this operation, you know." She meant it as a compliment. My father's face went dark. Not angry. Something worse. Exposed. Like someone had pulled a curtain and the audience could see the machinery backstage. 3 months after my mother's death, he hired a public relations firm. They rebranded the company, removed Carol's name from the website, the letterhead, the awards page. The company had always been Pullman Development Corporation to the outside world, but internally, on the original incorporation documents, it had been Carol Pullman Design Associates. He changed that too. He was not just hiding a trust. He was hiding the fact that everything he owned had been built by a woman whose name he spent 19 years erasing. And I was the living reminder. I had her jaw, her handwriting, her habit of staying quiet until the math was done. No wonder he wanted me gone. Leah invited me dress shopping in April. It was the first family invitation I had received in 8 years that did not come with conditions. I went. Not because I wanted to watch my half-sister try on gowns funded by money that should have been mine. I went because Grace told me to keep the surface smooth. Maintain appearances until the filing's clear. Do not give them a reason to suspect anything. The bridal salon was in a converted warehouse in South End. High ceilings, natural light, champagne on arrival. Diane was already there, seated in a velvet armchair with her legs crossed, looking like she owned the place. Leah tried on 7 dresses. She looked beautiful in every one. I am not going to pretend she did not. She had Diane's cheekbones and my father's confidence, and when she stepped out in a hand-beaded gown with a cathedral train, even the saleswomen stopped talking. The dress cost $14,000. Diane pulled out a credit card. The saleswoman swiped it. The receipt printed. Leah hugged her mother. Diane pressed the receipt flat on the counter and walked toward the door. I looked at the receipt. The card was a Visa. Last 4 digits. 7741. I recognized the number. It was linked to the second home equity line, the one opened in my name when I was 17. $118,000 of debt I never authorized, and they were using it to buy a wedding dress. I took my phone out of my pocket, snapped a photo of the receipt. The saleswoman glanced at me. I smiled. "Just keeping a memory," I said. $14,000, on a card with my social security number, for a dress I would never wear, for a wedding I was never supposed to survive. I sent the photo to Grace that night. She replied, "Noted." The rehearsal dinner was held the night before the wedding at a restaurant the venue recommended. Private room, white tablecloths, a jazz trio in the corner. 40 people. Family, wedding party, Nathan's parents. I was seated at the far end of the table between a groomsman I had never met and Nathan's great-aunt who was hard of hearing and mostly talked to her bread roll. My father stood for a toast. He held a glass of bourbon and spoke about family, about loyalty, about the kind of bonds that cannot be broken by distance or disagreement. He looked directly at me. "Some people earn their place in a family," he said. "Others walk away and expect it to be waiting." The room murmured. A few people glanced in my direction. Diane squeezed Richard's hand and looked at her plate with a modest, martyred expression. Nathan shifted in his chair. He caught my eye across the table. His jaw was tight. I sipped my water, smiled at the groomsman, asked him about his drive up from Atlanta. The moment passed. After dinner, I walked to the restroom. The hallway was narrow, exposed brick, low light. I heard voices around the corner before I saw them. Diane, Leah, whispering. "Tomorrow, your father will take care of it," Diane said. "She will not make a scene." "Are you sure?" Leah's voice was smaller than I expected. "What if she is too proud to cry in public. Trust me, she will read it, she will leave, and that will be the end of it." I stood still, counted to 5. Then I turned the corner and walked past them without acknowledging either of them. Diane straightened. Leah looked at her shoes. I washed my hands, dried them, walked back to the table and finished my water. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my hotel room. The lakeside estate had a small inn attached to the property. My room overlooked the water. I could hear the catering trucks arriving for the next day, the hum of a generator being tested, someone laughing on the dock. I opened the cedar box. I had carried it from my mother's closet to every apartment, every city, every new start for 19 years. The brass hinges were tarnished now. The wood had darkened. But when I lifted the lid, the smell was the same: cedar and lavender and old paper. My mother's closet, compressed into 6 inches of wood. I read the letter again. I had read it so many times the creases were soft, the ink faded in places where my thumb had rested. Myra, everything I built so you would never have to beg. Remember that when they tell you what you deserve. Then I turned the paper over. I had never looked at the back. Not at 14, when I first found it. Not at 18, when I packed it into my suitcase. Not at 25 or 30 or 32. I had read the front 100 times and folded it back into the box every single time without flipping it. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, smaller, more careful, like she had written it separately, were 3 things: a name, a phone number, and a short instruction. Margaret Shelby. The phone number had a different area code than ours, and the words, "Ask for the trust." My mother knew. She knew my father would suppress it. She knew Diane would help. She wrote herself a backup plan in her own hand and tucked it into a cedar box on a shelf her daughter would find. I held the letter against my chest. The paper was warm from my hands. 19 years late. But I was here. Grace called at 7:45 the morning of the wedding. I was already dressed. Navy suit, low heels, the cedar box in my handbag. I had not slept much. I had spent most of the night looking up Margaret Shelby, the attorney my mother had written on the back of the letter. She had retired in 2019, but her firm still operated. Grace had already contacted them in February. That was how she had found the trust filing so quickly. "Good news," Grace said. "Surrogate court accepted the trust activation affidavit. As of 9 a.m. yesterday, you are legally recognized as the sole beneficiary of Carol Pullman's testamentary trust." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. 40% of Pullman Development Corporation is yours, Myra. It has been yours since your 30th birthday. Your father just never told you. And the AG? Preliminary investigation opened. They have the identity theft complaint, the forged executor documents, the credit line records. Your father will receive an inquiry letter by early next week. I looked out the window. The lake was flat and silver. Chairs were being set up on the lawn in rows of 20. "Whatever happens today," Grace said, "you have already won on paper." "It was never about paper," I said. Grace was quiet for a moment, then, "One more thing. I traced the forged executor affidavit, the one that suppressed the trust. The notary stamp belongs to Diane Morris Pullman. She was the one who filed it." I closed my eyes. "Richard signed it," Grace said. "But Diane created it. She was the bookkeeper. She knew where every document lived." Diane, who told me not to make this about me, who erased my mother's name from the lobby, who suggested the disownment letter. I thanked Grace. Hung up. Put the phone in my bag next to the cedar box. Time to go to a wedding. If you have ever discovered that someone you trusted had been stealing from you in ways you never imagined, you know this feeling. That cold, clear knowing. If you are still here with me, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Because what happened at that wedding was just the beginning. The ceremony was beautiful. I am going to say that plainly because it is true. The estate sat on a ridge above the lake. White chairs fanned out across a manicured lawn, an archway of peonies and eucalyptus, a string quartet playing Pachelbel, then something modern I did not recognize. 300 guests in linen and silk, fanning themselves in the late May heat. I sat in the back row. Not by choice. Diane had arranged the seating. Family occupied the first 4 rows on the left. I was in row 14, right side, between a colleague of Nathan's and an elderly cousin of Diane's who smelled like lavender. I did not mind. Leah walked down the aisle with my father. She was radiant. The beaded dress caught the sunlight and scattered it in small white flashes across the lawn. Her veil was cathedral length, trailing behind her like a second bride. She was 29 and glowing and had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Nathan's eyes watered when he saw her. His hands trembled when he took hers. That part was real. Whatever else I might say about the people who surrounded this wedding, Nathan loved Leah. I could see it in the way his mouth tightened when he tried not to cry. The vows were traditional, short. A minister from the church Diane attended. "Do you take this woman?" "I do." "Do you take this man?" "I do." Rings. A kiss. Applause. I clapped with everyone else. I felt the cedar box press against my hip through my handbag. I thought about my mother walking down an aisle 20 years before this one, holding the arm of a man who would spend the next decade erasing her. The string quartet played the recessional. The sun hit the lake. 300 people stood and smiled. I stood and smiled too. The reception was held under a tent the size of a small airplane hangar, open sides facing the lake, a hardwood dance floor laid over the grass, a 12-piece band that had driven up from Nashville, table centerpieces that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Charlotte. I was seated at table 19, the furthest table from the head table, the table where you put the people you have to invite but do not want to see. I shared it with a retired accountant from Nathan's firm, 2 of Leah's sorority friends who spent the entire cocktail hour on their phones, and a couple from Diane's neighborhood who kept asking if I was the other daughter. I ate the salmon, drank the sparkling water, made pleasant small talk about Charlotte real estate and the unseasonable warmth. I was halfway through dessert when I saw him. My father stood up from the head table. He said something to Diane. She nodded. He adjusted his jacket, reached under the table and picked up an envelope. Cream-colored. Formal. I could see the wax seal from 40 feet away. He crossed the dance floor. The band was playing a Cole Porter standard. Couples were still dancing. He walked past them, between the tables, with the careful pace of a man who has rehearsed a moment and does not want to rush it. He arrived at table 19. He stood beside my chair. The retired accountant looked up. The sorority friends stopped scrolling. "Myra," he said. His voice was level, rehearsed. "I want to give you something. I have been thinking about this for a long time." He held the envelope in both hands, extended it toward me. Not a gift, a verdict. Diane watched from across the room, her hands folded, her chin lifted. The band played on. I took the envelope. The wax seal was pressed with his initials, RP. The paper was heavy, expensive. The kind you buy for documents you want to feel important. I broke the seal, unfolded 2 pages, read them in front of 6 people who had stopped eating. The letter was typed. Single-spaced. 2 pages. The first page was legal language. Formal severance of familial obligations. Dissolution of financial, emotional, and social bonds. Effective immediately and irrevocably. It read like a contract drafted by someone who had Googled legal templates and added their own grievances between the clauses. The second page was personal. My father's voice, typed but unmistakable. "You abandoned this family 18 years ago. You rejected every opportunity we offered. You chose to be a stranger." A paragraph about how Diane and Leah had built something beautiful without me. A paragraph about how I had refused to participate in healing. A paragraph about my mother that said she would have understood. The last line was centered and bolded. "You are no longer a Pullman in any meaningful way." I read it twice. Not because I needed to understand it, because I wanted to remember every word. The retired accountant put his fork down. One of the sorority friends whispered something to the other. The couple from Diane's neighborhood stared at their plates. I looked up. My father was standing 3 feet away, his jaw tight, his hands at his sides, waiting. Across the dance floor, Leah stood with her champagne, watching. Her smile was small and expectant. The smile of someone who has been told the ending of a movie and is watching it arrive. I folded the letter. Once. Twice. Tucked it into my jacket pocket, next to the cedar box. "Thank you, Dad," I said. "I will keep this." He blinked. That is the part I remember most clearly. Not the letter. Not the faces at the table. Not Leah's champagne or Diane's folded hands. My father blinked, and in that blink I saw the entire script he had written for this moment fall apart. I was supposed to cry. I was supposed to stand up so fast my chair scraped the floor. I was supposed to press my napkin to my eyes and walk quickly toward the exit while 300 guests watched and whispered and confirmed everything Diane had ever said about me. That was the plan. I could feel it hanging in the air like a note that never resolved. Instead, I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a smirk, not a grin of triumph. Just a calm, quiet smile, the kind you give someone when you know something they do not, and you are choosing not to say it yet. "Thank you, Dad," I said again. "I will keep this." I pushed back my chair. I stood. I walked to the dance floor and found Nathan's uncle, a 72-year-old retired pharmacist who had been sitting alone since the second course. I asked him if he wanted to dance. He did. The band was playing something slow. We moved in a small circle near the edge of the floor. He told me about his garden, about his wife who had passed, about a hydrangea bush that bloomed blue every June no matter what he did to the soil. Behind me, I could feel my father standing at table 19. Still standing, still holding nothing. He expected tears. I gave him a fold, a pocket, and a waltz. I danced 3 songs. I meant every step. Diane reached my father in under a minute. I saw her cross the dance floor from the corner of my eye, heels sharp on the hardwood, clutch pressed against her hip. She grabbed Richard's elbow and pulled him toward the edge of the tent. "What happened?" Her voice carried. She was not whispering the way she usually did. "Did she read it?" "She smiled," my father said. "She what?" "She read it. She folded it. She put it in her pocket and said thank you." I could not hear the rest because the band shifted into an up-tempo number and Nathan's uncle spun me, badly, but with enthusiasm. When I looked again, Diane and Richard were huddled near the bar with Leah between them. 3 heads close together, 3 mouths moving fast. 10 minutes passed. I danced with Nathan's uncle, then with the retired accountant from my table, who turned out to be a surprisingly good lead. I complimented the caterer on the salmon. I asked a bridesmaid about the flowers. I was warm, pleasant, present, and entirely unbothered. The contrast was visible to anyone paying attention. The family of the bride, clustered in a knot of tension by the bar. The bride's estranged half-sister, laughing on the dance floor. Leah broke away from the group. She walked toward me with her champagne and her cathedral veil trailing behind her on the grass. "Myra." Her voice was flat, controlled, the voice of someone who has been coached. "Congratulations, Leah. The ceremony was beautiful." "Why are you still here?" I looked at her, 29 years old, 4 hours married, standing in a $14,000 dress bought with a credit card in my name. "Because the band is good," I said. "And the salmon was excellent." I danced 3 more songs. They spent all 3 staring. Nathan found me between songs. He was holding 2 glasses of water. He handed me one without asking, and stood beside me at the railing overlooking the lake. The band was taking a break. The sun had set, and the fairy lights had taken over, hundreds of them strung between the tent poles, reflecting off the water in long gold lines. "Are you okay?" he said. Quiet, direct. The voice of a man who had seen something he did not understand, but recognized as wrong. "I am fine, Nathan. Congratulations, by the way. You looked like you meant every word up there." He half smiled. "I did." He paused, turned the water glass in his hands. "For what it is worth," he said. "Leah does not know the half of it. About your family, about the money. She thinks everything is her dad's success, his reputation, his buildings." "I know. I have seen the invoices, Myra. The subcontractor disputes. The way Diane handles the books. Something is not right. I have known that since the engagement party." I looked at him. He was 31. An engineer like me, structural, not commercial. He understood load-bearing walls. He understood what happens when the foundation is wrong. Why did you not say anything? I asked. Because I love her, and because I thought it was not my story to tell. He looked at the lake. I am sorry. About the letter. About all of it. Do not be sorry, I said. Just be good to her. He nodded. We stood there for a minute, watching the fairy lights reflect. Then he went back inside to find his wife. I stayed on the railing. The water lapped against the dock below. Somewhere in the distance, a bullfinch called twice and went quiet. Nathan was decent. That was something. Leah would need that. I found a bench at the end of the dock. The reception was winding down behind me. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. Out here it was dark and cool, and the lake stretched flat in every direction. The stars were out. The kind of sky you only see outside the city, where the light has not learned to compete. I opened my handbag and took out the cedar box. The brass hinges clicked softly. The smell rose. Cedar and lavender and old paper. 19 years of carrying this box, and it still smelled like her closet. I held the letter in both hands, read the front one more time, then turned it over and read the back again. Margaret Shelby. The phone number. Ask for the trust. Mom, I said, out loud. To the lake and the stars, and nobody. They erased you from everything. The company, the house, the photographs, the lobby wall. They changed the name you built and gave it to a man who never drew a single line. The water moved against the dock in small, slow pushes. But they could not erase you from the paperwork. They could not erase you from a filing in a county clerk's office in a town they never thought to check. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. 1. Not for the letter my father gave me. Not for the $14,000 dress or the table at the back of the room. For the 19 years my mother's name was buried. For the woman who saw it coming and wrote a backup plan in her own hand and hid it in a cedar box for her daughter to find. I wiped the tear. Put the letter back. Closed the lid. The hinges clicked. Then I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked back to the reception. There was nothing left to grieve here. Only something to finish. Diane found me in the hallway on my way back from the dock. The corridor connecting the tent to the inn was narrow. Exposed stone walls, low ceiling, a single sconce casting yellow light. She was standing in the middle of it, arms crossed, blocking the path the way she had blocked doorways in my childhood, not with locks, but with presence. You think smiling makes you strong? She said. Her voice was clipped, controlled. But underneath it, something was vibrating. Fear, maybe, or anger that her script had failed. I think the flowers are beautiful, Diane. Do not patronize me. You read that letter. You know what it means. You are not part of this family. You never were. I am aware of what my father wrote. She stepped closer. Your mother would be ashamed of... Do not. I said it the way you close a door. No slam. Just the click of a latch engaging. Diane stopped. She had been mid-sentence, mid-breath, mid-performance. Nobody had interrupted her in 19 years. She blinked, recalculated, shifted tactics. This family gave you everything, she said. Her voice cracked, not with sadness, but with the effort of maintaining the character she had built for 2 decades. And you gave us nothing. I looked at her. At the woman who threw away my mother's wedding photo, who signed a forged executor affidavit, who opened credit cards in my name and used them to buy a wedding. I gave you my credit score, I said. You used it. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You are just like your mother, she said, cold, calculating, thinking you are better than everyone. Good night, Diane. I walked past her. She did not follow. Her heels stayed planted on the stone floor behind me, clicking once, twice, then stopping. I called Grace from the parking lot. The gravel crunched under my shoes. The music was muffled out here, just bass and the faint outline of a saxophone. The air smelled like cut grass and lake water. They doubled down, I said. Tell me. I told her about the letter, about Diane in the hallway, about Leah asking why I was still there, about Richard standing at table 19 with nothing in his hands. Grace listened. She did not interrupt. The AG inquiry letter went out Friday. She said when I finished, "Your father should receive it Monday at his office. Standard delivery." Monday. 2 days from now. My father would sit at his desk, open an envelope from the state attorney general, and read that his company was under preliminary investigation for trust suppression and identity theft. "He gave me a letter tonight," I said. "I would like to give him one on Monday." "Already drafted," Grace said. "Trust transfer notice and demand for full credit remediation, damages claim included. I just need you to confirm. Do you want it sent to his office or his home?" "Both." She paused. "Both will mean Diane sees it too." "Diane forged the executor documents. She should see what happens next." Grace did not argue. "I will send them Monday morning. First thing." "Thank you, Grace." "Myra." Her voice softened. "Your mom would be proud." I hung up, stood in the parking lot for a full minute. The music inside swelled. The band was playing their last set. I could hear applause, muffled through the walls of the tent. I went back inside, found the dance floor, found Nathan's uncle. Danced one more song. Some people wait their whole lives for the moment someone who hurt them finally faces the truth. Sometimes the truth arrives in an envelope. If this story is making your heart pound right now, you are not alone. Stay with me. Monday, 9:14 in the morning. I know the exact time because Grace had tracking numbers on both deliveries, and she texted me when they showed delivered. I was at my own office in Charlotte, third cup of coffee, reviewing steel specifications for a hospital expansion in Gastonia. My phone buzzed twice. Grace. Both delivered, office and home. I set the phone down, picked up my coffee, went back to the specs. In my father's office, a corner suite on the 4th floor of a building my mother designed, 2 envelopes sat on his desk. His assistant had placed them there at 8:55 with the rest of his mail. She would later tell Nathan she noticed his hands when he opened the first one. Envelope 1, State Attorney General, Preliminary Inquiry Letter, Request for financial records related to Pullman Development Corporation. Subject: Alleged trust suppression, identity theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. Envelope 2, Grace Huang, Attorney at Law, on behalf of Myra C. Pullman. Trust activation notice. Formal demand for transfer of 40% ownership of Pullman Development Corporation, per the Testamentary Trust of Carol Ann Pullman, filed 2006. Demand for full credit remediation. Demand for restitution. $47,000 in documented damages related to unauthorized home equity lines of credit. My father read both. His assistant said his hands shook. Not anger. Something more fundamental than anger. The kind of trembling that comes when 19 years of careful construction begins to shift under load. He called Diane first. "We have a problem." He called his attorney second. He did not call me. 2 envelopes. He gave me one on Saturday. I gave him 2 on Monday. I finished the hospital specs by noon. Ate a sandwich at my desk. The steel order needed revisions. I made the revisions. The day continued. He called at 4:17 in the afternoon. I was driving home from a site visit. His name appeared on my phone screen and I pulled into a gas station parking lot before I answered. Not because I was nervous, because I wanted to be still. "What the hell is this?" he said. No greeting, no preamble. "You are going to destroy this family over money?" I turned off the engine. "You opened home equity lines in my name when I was 16, Dad." Silence. "You suppressed Mom's trust for 19 years. Silence. "And you handed me a letter at a wedding telling me I am not family." His breathing was heavy, ragged, the breathing of a man whose walls are cracking and who has no blueprint for what comes next. "Your mother," he started. "My mother built that company. And you erased her? That is not what happened. Carol and I were partners. I did what any surviving spouse would do. I maintained. You maintained control. Over her legacy. Over her name. Over her daughter's social security number. He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Lower. Stripped of the boardroom polish. If this goes public, we lose everything. The company. The house. Leah's. You did not lose everything when I left at 18. You will figure it out. Myra, please. That was the moment. Not the letter at the wedding. Not Diane in the hallway. That single word. Please. From a man who had spent 30 years never asking for anything from anyone. A man who had signed a letter disowning his daughter 3 days ago was now saying, please. I did not enjoy it. I want to be clear about that. It did not taste like victory. It tasted like metal. Talk to your attorney, Dad. Mine is ready. I hung up, started the car, drove home. Diane called 20 minutes later. She must have taken the phone from Richard. Myra, please. Same word, different voice. Hers was wet with tears, the kind that come fast and loud when the performance requires urgency. I have nowhere to go if this company fails. Your father and I, we built this life together. Leah just got married. Think about your sister. I pulled into my apartment parking garage, turned off the engine again. Diane, you forged the executor documents. That was your father's decision. You opened credit cards in my name. You used them to fund a wedding. You used a card linked to a fraudulent home equity line to buy a $14,000 dress. The crying stopped. Just like that. Like someone had turned off a faucet. Your mother left because she was selfish, Diane said. The warmth was gone from her voice now, replaced by something cold and cornered. She put work before family. She was so busy with her drawings and her buildings that she forgot she had a husband. Just like you. Cold. Calculating. Thinking you are better than... My mother did not leave, Diane. She died. Silence. She died of pancreatic cancer at 41, in a hospital bed, asking for her sketch pad while her husband scheduled client dinners. She did not leave. You just told everyone she did. Diane made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not crying, not anger. Something between a gasp and a groan. The sound of a narrative collapsing under its own weight. My mother put a trust in place because she knew exactly who she married, I said. Goodbye, Diane. I hung up, sat in the parking garage for 10 minutes. The concrete was cold and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Then I went upstairs and made dinner. Leah called 3 days later, Thursday evening. Her voice was small, not the voice she used at the wedding. Polished, coached, confident. This was the voice of someone whose furniture had been rearranged in the dark and who kept bumping into things she did not expect to be there. Nathan told me some things, she said. About the credit cards, about a trust. I was sitting on my couch. The television was off. The cedar box was on the coffee table in front of me. Is it true? She asked. Did he take out loans in your name? Yes. And Mom left you something? A trust? With shares in the company? Yes. Why did nobody ever tell me? I closed my eyes. 29 years of indoctrination. 29 years of being told I abandoned the family. 29 years of believing the story because the story was comfortable, and the truth was not. Would you have believed me? I said. The pause was long. I counted to 6 before she answered. I do not know, she said. That is honest, and I respect that. Another pause. I could hear Nathan in the background, a murmur, too low to make out, supporting her from the other room without hovering. What happens now? Leah asked. The courts decide. There is an investigation. There will be a settlement, or there will be a trial. Your father's attorney will advise him. And us? I thought about the 12-year-old who asked why I was never in the family photos, the 10-year-old who was told I chose to leave, the 29-year-old standing in a dress bought with stolen credit. Leah, I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted what Mom left for me. That is all. She exhaled, something close to a sob, then controlled. Okay, she said. Okay. We hung up. I did not call her back. She did not call me, but neither of us blocked the other's number. That was something. The settlement came 6 weeks later. The Attorney General's investigation found sufficient evidence for civil action: trust suppression, breach of fiduciary duty, identity theft. Richard's attorney reviewed the case and did the math. A trial would be public. The filings would be searchable. The clients who had trusted Pullman Development for 20 years would read about forged documents and stolen Social Security numbers in the morning paper. Richard's attorney recommended settlement. Grace agreed. It was the right call. The terms were straightforward. 1. Full transfer of 40% ownership of Pullman Development Corporation to Myra Carol Pullman, per the testamentary trust of Carol Ann Pullman, established 2006. 2. Credit remediation. Both home equity lines of credit closed. All associated debt removed from my credit record. $47,000 in documented damages paid to me within 90 days. 3. Carol Pullman's name restored as co-founder on all corporate documents, the company website, and the lobby plaque at the main office, effective within 30 days. Richard signed on a Tuesday. Diane signed beside him. Their attorney's office was in a glass tower in uptown Charlotte. Grace told me later that Richard's hand was steady when he signed, that he looked like a man who had accepted a diagnosis. I did not attend the signing. I was reviewing structural drawings for a mixed-use development in Durham, but I checked the company website that evening. There it was. Updated that afternoon. The About page. Second paragraph. Pullman Development Corporation was founded in 1998 by Carol and Richard Pullman. I stared at the screen. Her name, in the same font as his, in the same sentence as his. 20 years after they removed it. I took a screenshot. Sent it to Grace. There she is. Grace replied with a period. Just a period. She understood. Richard stepped down as CEO within the month. The company announced it as a semi-retirement. The press release cited a desire to focus on personal endeavors. Nobody questioned it publicly, though Nathan told me the senior partners had been briefed on the investigation, and the mood in the office was cold. Diane did not speak to me. I did not expect her to. Some doors close with a letter. Others close with a signature on a settlement document. Hers closed with both. Leah sent me a text message on the 1st of every month. How are you? Same message every time. I replied every time. Good. You? We were not reconciled. We were corresponding. There is a difference, and it was enough. Nathan sent me a photograph in August. Leah sitting on the floor of their living room, cross-legged, surrounded by old design journals she had found in the attic. My mother's handwriting filling every page, sketches of buildings that had been built, sketches of buildings that never were, notes about materials, notes about light. She is starting to understand, Nathan wrote. I looked at the photo for a long time. My half-sister, reading my mother's journals, discovering a woman she had been told did not matter. Pullman Development continued. Smaller, quieter. The company still built things. Richard still owned 60%. But the buildings did not carry the same weight when the name on the door included someone he had tried to erase. I voted my shares by proxy. I did not attend board meetings. I did not visit the office. I had my own buildings to design, my own steel to spec, my own blueprints to read at 2 in the morning. The 40% was not about control. It was about correction. Some corrections take 19 years. Some take 6 weeks. Some take both. I put the cedar box on my desk. New office, bigger firm. A corner with a window that overlooked a construction site where a community health center was going up. My project, from foundation to roof. The box sat between my engineering license and a framed blueprint of my first solo build, a commercial kitchen for a nonprofit culinary program in West Charlotte. Both earned, both mine. I opened the lid one more time, cedar and lavender. 19 years and the smell had not faded. I read the front of the letter. Myra, everything I built so you would never have to beg. I turned it over. Ask for the trust. I had. I took a photo of both sides, printed them, framed them in a simple black frame, and set them next to the box. The wood was darker now than when my mother placed it on that shelf. The brass hinges had a green tint at the edges, but the fit was still tight. The lid still closed with a clean, quiet click. My mother had built things that lasted. Buildings that stood through storms. A company that outlived her marriage. A trust that survived 19 years of suppression. And a cedar box that still smelled like her closet on a Tuesday afternoon in September. In a corner office her daughter had earned the hard way. I closed the lid. I did not need to open it again, but I knew where it was. And that was the whole point. My father handed me a letter meant to erase me, but you cannot erase someone who already knows who she is. My mother taught me that. Not with speeches, not with lectures, but with a few words written on the back of a letter I carried for 19 years. The people who try to make you small are the ones who know you are not. Trust yourself. The paperwork will follow. That is my story. 1 letter at a wedding, 1 cedar box, and 19 years of patience. If you have ever had to fight for something your family tried to hide from you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.